Okay. 1997, when this film came out, I worked at the video store, and this was, employees, a selection that they recommend. This was a Nick pick.
Wow.
In the video store. So if you came in the old video store and it's on the shelf, employees pick, this was one of them.
Huh. I remember the poster, the puzzle pieces of Michael Douglas, which we should all hope that our puzzles, when they're assembled, look as good as Michael Douglas. But for me, it was the poster doesn't really tell you anything about the movie, though.
I don't think the poster
just a Michael
works.
Douglas.
I don't think it makes any sense, right?
Yeah. So for me, I avoided this film for years. Didn't realize it was a David Fincher film. It's actually the last David Fincher film for me not to have seen. So I was excited to do a first-time watch.
And that's hilarious, because this was supposed to be his first movie he's supposed to direct.
Yeah,
and that is
before
agent.
7.
Yeah.
And then given its kind of quality of how it's aged, he's probably luckier he did 7 because it kept with a career. If he had done this film first, it might have suffered. Yeah. Today we were talking about David Fincher's 1997 film The Game on Kyle and Nick on Film. So join us. We won't play a game.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast.
And I'm Kyle Goethe from GoatheFilmReviews.com. And today we're breaking down David Fincher's, I don't want to say it's still early Fincher, I guess, because he's still operating on a really high level, putting out content.
It's always dark.
Last week or last year.
He loves dark.
Yeah, and I think this is a movie, it's a unique one because it is kind of still like David Fincher forming his director, persona. There's a lot of things that felt reminiscent of Panic Room, another film we talked about on the show here, where there's you can feel the David Fincher that's behind the surface, that's pushing through in this film.
I always assigned 7, The Game, and Fight Club as kind of a trilogy. It's a single white guy, dude, anger, right? But here, Michael Douglas is, this is actually his career a little bit well known. He's already established, right? He's made a name for himself.
Basic Instinct.
Yeah, and already at 1997, Michael Douglas has made a staple that he can act really well at projecting power. He does that really well in any movie, as well as showing uncontrollable rage. And he gets to do both of this in this movie.
Yeah, he gets that equal parts like Gordon Gekko and his character from Falling Down. Yeah. Douglas plays a successful banker, basically, who receives a gift from his brother, played by Sean Penn. The gift is an invitation to play a game, if you will.
Rich guy game, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely it's one of those upper echelon, we're gonna kind of have some weird fun with it. The game begins to unravel his perception of what is real and what is part of it, and kind of mess with just his overall psyche as he falls apart.
This is multiple viewings of mine. This is your first time viewing.
First time.
I do like hearing the flashback scene, the start of it. I'm watching old videos, and I guess kind of a cliche. We did a lot of that in the 90s. I'm watching old videos and the graininess and all that stuff. But then you cut into Michael Douglas washing his face. Right, this cleansing, I'm going to start all over. And that beginning is kind of the whole point of the movie, right? His past, and he's trying to forget what's going on. And of course realizes his birthday. That's why he gets his birthday gift. And his age, which is the same age as his father, committed suicide. So there's a lot of things he's navigating throughout his day, as well as maintaining, what is it, publishing company?
Oh, he's a successful banker moving items from one account to another in order to kind of take, control of stocks and whatnot. So
the other thing about this is the first 5 minutes, you have his very standoffish person, Nick Van Horn, against women. I never saw that. He's really not so. I don't think he's misogynist. I think he just projects what his ex-wife done on all other women.
Yeah, and this is of course
it's more personal to him, not to just.
Their marriage seems pretty recently dissolved. And I think that's part of it. He's holding on to a lot of baggage. He has a lot of resentment towards his brother for not being the person that his father would have wanted.
Yeah, this
and also
prodigal son kind of
his role of taking on the fatherly role when his dad died.
Yeah.
When he was 48, Nick took on the fatherly role, had to basically help raise his younger brother. So he's got that. He's also got his ex-wife is pregnant with a new baby with her new husband, and that he doesn't have his other child in his life. Yeah. So he's holding on to that. He's just kind of holding on to a lot of parts of his past.
So that's what I'm saying. It's not a projection of it. Just being a misogynist because he does like Elsa, who works at the house, but he's very distant to him.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the women that work around him, he's very distant to him. And
Yeah.
he doesn't have to speak a very casual tone or very relaxed tone. It's very much, yeah, you told me what else is new. I don't like her, this
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
he does admit that later on that he was distant to his wife even. Like in general, I think he just has a level of distance from everybody. Perhaps, it's something as simple as if I don't show you how I feel, I won't be heartbroken when you leave.
Yeah, so it's almost like and Michael Douglas talked to Fincher about reworking the script, very much a Scrooge mentality. I think the original screenplay didn't have a lot of personality in this person. And it was more about the content of the plot. And Michael Douglas wanted to emphasize this person. The problem is he's not very likable, even to his own self.
Well, the script went through a lot of permutations because initially he had a younger sister who's going to be played by Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
And Foster wanted to actually play a daughter role. She wanted to kind of like formulate her character to be a daughter of his, but also was kind of like not really truly invested in the film because she was also working on Contact with Robert Zemeckis at the same time.
Which she's probably had a more,
yeah. So eventually her character was written out, changed to a male character. Jeff Bridges was almost involved, and then Sean Penn joined. There was that whole mess, and then there was also the notion of rewriting the ending. Fincher had basically the entire time he was working on production was still trying to wrap his head around how do I end this movie. There's a lot of different versions of the ending, and he himself is disappointed in the film because he felt he was never able to get that third act the way he wanted to.
I think Michael Douglas' another appeal to this is kind of he's lived this world a little bit, and a person that's his whole entire career is kind of, no matter what he does, is overshadowed by his dad's career.
Yeah. And
I think he, even though throughout his whole life is probably like, how's your dad doing, right? You can win all these Oscars and do all these great movies, but it's still going to be, hey, how's your dad? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the Douglas.
So there's a little bit of, they always say the little bit of truth to your acting.
Yeah.
And I think Michael Douglas understands this kind of perception.
I agree. I think that's true, actually. And his performance here, we talked about, power. I always felt like he conveys this, like, sensuality to him, where, like, you're never really sure, like, what's going on in his brain. And I think part of that is he's got, like, Fatal Attraction and Basic Instinct, and he's got all these characters where, like, his interactions with people, there's that level of unhinged that's always behind the surface with him. He rarely ever plays a person that's joyful without like a sense of darkness behind them.
I want to bring up another thing about David Fincher movies is in the mid-90s all the way to the late 90s, probably 1999 when it kind of stopped, is this retro fashion that was undercurrent in men's world. And a lot of people, especially in college, I would even have a shirt from the 70s, and there was kind of a little fringe little fashion statement, a little bit of just playing with fun. Retro fashion came in. You can see it in Seven with the old-fashioned suit and and then Sean Penn having a wide collar shirt and everything, and Michael Douglas actually bringing back turtlenecks, and that was a little bit of a slight undercurrent fashion trend that came out in the late 90s of what we call retro fashion.
Interesting.
And in fact, it's played heavily in Fight Club. I mean, Tyler Durden wears a lot of retro fashion. Yeah.
And Fincher's films. We talked last week about Metropolitan and how it kind of has a timeless feel because that was the intention when you try to avoid a time period. Fincher's films never really feel like they're trying to avoid a time period, but there's such a unique atmosphere, tone, and setting to each of them that they feel like they exist out of time.
Yeah.
I don't mean like any time. I mean their own specific universe.
What year is, Seven? Let's say 40, 50, 60s?
It always feels like it's today with like a rolling time period, Yeah,
so there's a lot of play of David Fincher likes to do repetitions, so there's a lot of women messing his shirts. His clothing is very important. I also talk about that there's a close-up of him at home. So there's a lot of close-ups of him at home, but at work he's projected long, almost like Network, where in The Office you do wide shots of him.
He's merely dominating part of the setting. Yeah, it's when he's at work. Whereas at home it's cerebral.
Yeah, even the couches are closed in. This whole house, but his whole world, continues to shrink his world. Yeah, personally, yeah. Another takeaway is it's definitely a person out of his element. This is a person that doesn't want to be out of his element. He goes to the same places, has the same country club. It's a very old-fashioned country club. So I do like the art direction. It got to blend a little bit of old money kind of world.
Yeah, it's an art direction that doesn't, again, like it aids to that not timelessness but otherworldliness to it. Alternate reality almost, kind of a visual appeal to it, and that aids to the timelessness, to the retroness, to the even just the character. Like I tend to find that when you get a lot of money, you don't. Oftentimes we can assume that people go forward. They buy the expensive watches, they buy this, but some people go back and they buy the classic items.
I mean, even in the late 90s, nobody was really carrying a suitcase anymore.
Yeah.
And he's still carrying a suitcase anymore.
Yeah, not only that, it comes back to haunt him as he's unable to open it at one point.
The other picture I'd like to bring up is, this is definitely like Martin Scorsese used for After Hours, of definitely a playful of how do you make movies and the play of doing movies. And I think this is David Fincher's after having a game and having fun of making movies, the illusions of making a game, of setting up the audience of the whole hospital all of a sudden gone, and it's kind of how you make a movie. You fake a place that looks like a hospital entrance, and all of a sudden, where did everybody go?
Yeah.
So it's definitely the play of movie making as well as making this movie.
When he hinted at how far can you drag the audience through the film before they lose it, before they get mad.
Before you get mad.
And for me, I thought he was very successful in that drag through, because as the film went on, I didn't know where we were going. I had expectation that it was going to be shocking. And throughout the entire narrative, every time some new layer was peeled away, I was like, in my head, I stopped trusting people about 10 minutes in. Every single new character, every single old character.
Well, you know Sean Penn. You got to trust Sean Penn in a movie, right?
Well, not only that, but he shows up. He gets him involved. He's the brother. But then I went as far as like, is he the brother? Like I was like,
but the dialogue is great, because the ex-wife, I liked your wife, and then the wife says, well, I liked your brother, and that just drives a fork in him, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I would talk. So there's a lot of sense of playfulness. There's a lot of sense of how do you create movies and how do you create atmospheres. And let's talk about Deborah Cara Unger. I think this is the first Hollywood movie she was in.
She'd done some work, pitter-pattered throughout, but really, like, this is one of the few films where she gets more space to shine, really.
Yeah, and I think she didn't even audition personally, like a film audition for Fincher and Michael Douglas at the same time.
Well, I read this. She was in the movie Crash, the David Cronenberg film.
Yeah.
And so her audition tape that she sent in was her 2-minute sex scene from that film, and they thought it was a joke. But then they watched it, and they were admiring how good her acting was in that scene, and that was what drove them both to go and actually meet with her. It's a very unusual way to get involved in film. I've never thought of doing that.
But here is and of course David Fincher is going to put White Rabbit from Jefferson Airplane in there. This Alice in Wonderland, but he's going to reverse it, that Alice is enticing Michael Douglas to keep pulling the string along with him.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I like that play, that even though it's very much, let's go down the rabbit hole, but it's Alice actually pulling you.
That's another version of Fincher messing with people, though. Like, I think he does like to do that. We've seen that in a ton of his other films. I think he loves films, even like a Gone Girl, where there's like more of the twists and turns happen at the halfway point than anywhere else in the film there. Yeah. He likes to completely pull the rug out from under you, and it's true with even just what he puts in frame. Because you remember in Fight Club how there's like a Starbucks cup in every single sequence of the film. In this film, there's a can of haggis in almost every single shot of the film. Anywhere you could sneak it in, because his cinematographer was nicknamed Haggis.
That's why I like the play of this, because there's a lot, if you rewatch it, there's a lot of where you can find CRS, and that's either him playing you to remind you, or as part of the whole psychological of going crazy. But yeah, that's why I'm saying it's a lot of fun of playing with the illusions of making a movie as well as making the movie.
Yeah, and there's even that CRS, there's a van at one point that pulls up that I can't remember what the first letter was, but it's something Repair Systems instead of like the gaming name. Like they changed the name of what the company was on different vehicles. And then I started looking to see if I could find CRS on the backgrounds or businesses. It's again another kind of like playful way that he maneuvers around the narrative and tries to make you second guess what you're seeing.
So anytime a representative from CRS says keep the pen, be very careful.
All the time. I wish that happened more often, because I'm always losing the pens.
Without even mentioning it, and I think you can find it, does the ending work for you? Because a lot of people did not like the ending. Roger Ebert didn't think the ending was fit for what the movie was trying to say. But I think the ending kind of bookends it. It's a little bit of a ridiculous to it.
So here's my takeaway with the ending. I don't think the ending works for his character.
Yeah.
There are choices made once our big reveals take place that don't feel like Nick Van Orton anymore. They don't feel like what he's doing is integral to what his character arc has been the whole movie.
Yeah.
That was where my problem lied with it. Because I've expected this, I expected that. In my head, I thought there was going to be a larger reveal. I thought it was going to be a bit more bombastic, maybe
It's
something
a little
more
bit anticlimactic.
Yeah, it kind of you know where it's going
is,
almost, and it, yeah, kind of just it took me down a bit where I was like, okay, here's the problem with the ending though, and it's that the entire film I'm buying into the unreality of what's going on because there's a lot of things in this movie that you're thinking to yourself, that couldn't happen. How could that happen? And that's my issue is when you look at a film like Saw, which again like plays with your expectation of what you're seeing and how it unfolds.
Yes.
Or even the more recent film, Escape Room. Escape Room is a horror movie that kind of gets to you very early on and tells you this is going to be unrealistic and over the top. It tells you that early on, so then when it starts to get weird and silly and stupid, you're kind of still bought into it. This film plays its realism so hard for 2 hours that when you get to that ending, you get like the what, the where, the why. You don't get the how. And the how for me was like, how did they anticipate he would do this? How did they set up this?
Right.
How'd they get away with this? There's a sequence where he wakes up in another country. How did they do that without doing that? And I don't want to get into specifics. I'm going to try and avoid all that as much.
Like I'm trying to cite After Hours, Martin Scorsese, where it doesn't make logical sense. It makes movie sense.
Yeah,
right?
it's
a lot
very
of play
much. But this is a film for me where I think most of the time the journey is more important than the destination. I think the destination detracts from the journey.
Yeah.
And maybe it's on a rewatch. Maybe I'll see it differently. It's a film that I do want to watch a second time in a couple months.
I like this movie. It's a recommendation, but I think the journey of it, the beginning and the journey of it, is far more enticing, far more a love of making a movie and how you craft it than the ending to it. Yeah.
See, that's why I'm going to recommend one viewing. I'm going to recommend one viewing. I don't know if I could tell someone this is a movie I want to watch again and again and again. But I do recommend watching it once because it is a very strongly atmospheric, very unusual movie.
And it plays with your mind too.
It
is kind of like a psychological thriller, yeah.
And so it's very successful until that ending for me, where I feel like the ending is like, you know what a lot of people are going to be guessing? We'll give them some of that, we'll give them some of this, and it never really feels like it lacks the punch.
Yeah.
That I know Fincher's movies are capable.
But I do like the ending.
The ending.
Yeah.
That's a better ending than the ending. You're not going to understand what we're saying.
No, but I like the ending, right? We did that a lot in the 90s of you have to end the movie more than once. But I think Fincher realized and Michael Douglas realized that ending needed something else, and that was a great...
It's a better version of it, but then you're kind of waiting in the ending. Again, sorry folks. You're waiting in that ending for there to be something.
Yeah.
And I feel like the final scene of the film, in the ending, you're just like, what are we going to do? And then it just kind of ends. And that's where I mean, like, his character... All the things he's gone through in this movie, I didn't see him doing that. I didn't believe that he would choose to do the things he does in the ending.
So I think the whole point of the film is you try to, even though you're unconsciously want to get out of your element.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Nick Van Orton, Michael Douglas' character, wants to break up his routine, even though he's rigid in his routine. And here his brother offers his opportunity to break up your routine. And even though he's doing it, he's kicking out of his element, he's actually slightly enjoying it. If you watch, he goes into the airport not knowing if somebody's following and stalking him. And as you look around navigating and people whispering, they have some people doing sign language, and he wonders if they're talking about him, and he has a slight smile.
Mm-hmm.
And that encapsulates the entire action of the movie, that even though he doesn't want to do it, he kind of does.
Yeah. It's a sixth sense of, like, in Total Recall, Schwarzenegger is like the man wrong, but at the same time, he's having fun doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
He is enjoying it. Yeah. And I think that's an element to, like, Nick Van Orton's character is, like, even when you're struggling, even when you're confused or scared or paranoid, that thrill, just like being a theater goer, is inherent. be scared and still be having fun. You can be nervous and still be having fun. And that's kind of like, again, like why I connected with Nick through 95% of the film. And then I dropped, you know?
Yeah.
So I definitely want to recommend the film. I think it's worth watching once, but I'm not going to give it like a strong, this will be a life-changing movie. I think it was a fun experience.
I think Michael Douglas doing what he does best. And if you're a fan of Michael Douglas, this is his wheelhouse, definitely, of playing power and losing and rage. I would say editing is far better. It saves this movie. The editing does.
It keeps the pace going very strong for a film where you spend 90% of it going, what the hell is going on? And that can be very frustrating when you're watching a movie. I know a lot of people turn off movies, and that's why I think this movie would be less, would be less popular even today than it was when it came out, because it didn't do great at the box office.
No.
I think this movie, in the age of streaming, is going to get a lot of people to press off earlier on in the film. But he does do a really good job of making you want to keep going when you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm just a glutton for punishment who wants to watch every movie beginning to end. But I can see people getting frustrated and being like, no, like, I'm not going to deal with this anymore.
Right, a lot of people don't, it's the whole mentality of it's all, at the end, it was just a dream, and then people get really frustrated at that.
Yes.
And it's not like that,
No, it definitely, I feel like the ending itself could have worked with just a little bit more time and you know, really like working around it in your head. But he said himself, he just could not figure out how to do it. There is a way to do it, I'm sure. I don't think it was figured out correctly.
No. This is a David Fincher film. I think it's his you can see his navigation, his maturity. Mm-hmm. This is definitely, I know, like I said, I grouped these all together, The Game and Fight Club, as kind of a trilogy. They're set in the same time of the mid to late 90s, so they have their kind of same kind of flavor to them. And eventually we'll go on to do Panic Room and then off his career.
And I think he's blessed as a director, because I do feel like there is not a bad David Fincher film. I want to stress that with The Game. Even, like, I'm not saying I didn't like it. I'm saying there's not a bad David Fincher film. There's just varying levels of good to amazing.
Right.
You know, and he's done it all. He's done good movies. He's done great movies. He's done amazing movies. And he's one of those few directors that, like, I didn't realize it, but I would see almost any one of his movies opening weekend, because he just does good work.
I do like that scene of you beating the crap out of his suitcase, but you
you
don't do it close up. You do it far away, so that you have people ignoring him as he's. What you do? If you have a meltdown in public, people don't really want to.
It reminded me of George Clooney and his freakouts during Out of Sight. Actually, because the camera's never
focused
the same time
on them. The same
but
time.
But he's just kind of like when he's booted out of the bank. And, like,
the bank, and he has in the park.
And he has that little freak out. It's like, it's like that kind of like uncomfortable, like, let's avoid him as much as we can. So,
so it's a strong recommendation. I still kind of flavor it. It's a little dated. It used to be very current, you know, especially when you were trapped in the late 90s. But it's a fun journey.
Definitely worth checking out. I'm happy we got a chance to break it down, because there is a lot of meat to the film. So, recommendation for me as well, at least watch it once. You may hate it when you're done. I liked it quite a bit, but I did have problems with the ending. But I think, whether or not you love it or hate it, this is a movie that tests you as a audience goer, and in a good way.
Yeah, it's one of those, you gotta watch the whole scene, what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot more happening than what you're focused on.
I watched this many times, I forgot how important his watch is in the movie.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
That's another element, because we talked about it before, David Fincher works with details, that goes big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely, if you've seen The Game, let us know in the comments down below. Very interested in this one, because this is a deep cut Fincher movie. I think it's one that's passed by more often than not. Of course, I've seen every one of his movies, didn't watch this one.
Well, I think after the huge success of Fight Club, this kind of went away.
Yeah, then it started to build, and we started to see that forward momentum with him. Yeah. But we want to know what you guys think about it. So let us know in the comment section down below. Hey, give us a like if you can too. That really helps us in the YouTube algorithms, gets the video out there more, helps create that conversation piece, and it supports us. Another way you can do that is check out the Patreon. Patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. Tiers is
part of the team.
$1 a month, guys. It's so simple to help support independent content creators and keeping the film breakdown conversation going. You can also comment, subscribe, and share the video. They're cheap, or easy or free ways that you can help support the show as
well. I like the film, but I probably agree with your disagreement. What you don't like about it.
See, that's the thing is I think this is, again, one of those movies where I like the movie. I can see people hating it. And I'm curious to see if you did hate it, why? If you absolutely think it's his best movie, I'm curious to see why. Because there's a lot to really unpack.
Yeah.
But hey, that's all the time we have to unpack. So it's your turn now to continue unpacking. I'm Kyle Goethe. You can check out all my film reviews at goathefilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and we'll catch you later.